This is Stray Kids on stage. And this is after performing. Stray Kids attend an absurd amount of music shows while promoting their albums. In their first year alone, they performed a whopping 66 times. And while we only see a quick little 3-minute performance, each one requires them to be there for 12 to even 15 hours. Unlike in 2018, not all of Stray Kids' music show performances are live anymore. A lot of the time they're pre-recorded. It certainly doesn't mean they're easy, but they're at least not waiting around quite as long. Back when they primarily did live performances, Stray Kids had to arrive around 7 or 8 a.m. The group wakes up much earlier, around 3 or 5 a.m. They get basically zero sleep at night. Because of that, they often end up sleeping during their commutes, or at least they try to. Even while they're driving to the station, they've got idle responsibilities. They often film this time, meaning most of the members, if not all of them, can't be asleep. Once they get to the TV station, they run through their dry rehearsals. This is when they use the name tags. With about 20 acts performing each episode, this takes a while. Each artist needs to run through their performance long enough to understand what the plan is for camera angles, positions, and the goals. This gives the production team a chance to make sure everything is set up right. They certainly try to get through this as quickly as possible, but with how many of the music shows are live broadcasts, they need everything to be perfect. Rarely do people appreciate or even notice when something runs smoothly, but if there's even the slightest mistake, it's immediately critiqued. This whole process usually lasts about 2 hours. Stray Kids have to be on standby for a long time during it all. What's lucky for them though is as they've been in the industry longer, they've grown trust and appreciation. Because of that, they usually aren't towards the front of the dry rehearsals, meaning that they can arrive a few minutes later than other acts. This is also why they can do more pre-recorded performances than before. Then they wait again. During this time, Stray Kids will review their individual performances. Quite often they need to modify the choreography because of certain camera angles. This gives them a chance to note down if they're doing something correctly, incorrectly, when he's changing, where they're getting too aggressive, so many things that they have to look for. Above anything else though, they try to use this time for resting. They can't sleep long, but they try to get some. And honestly, it's tough work trying to get sleep during this time. You sleep too much during standby and you aren't ready to perform the next time. Sleep too little and you could be too tired to put on a proper performance. For that reason, they usually opt for the latter. Better to give yourself time to prepare after all. Artificial energy plays a large role during this time. Things like coffee, energy drinks, and even vitamin drinks are huge. Before they know it, Stray Kids need to head back out and rehearse the second time, this time for something called camera blocking. This rehearsal acts as though it's the real performance. Stray Kids are expected to understand which cameras are running when and align with it. If this rehearsal doesn't go well, it's a concern. Totally fine to make a slip up or two during this run through, but you really don't want to. Once they wrap up the camera blocking rehearsal, they're back on standby for the real deal. In this time, they get the choice of resting or working again. Being that 3racha writes the group's music, they try to be productive with this time. Bangchan especially tries to write while they wait. On one specific instance, we actually saw him taking Ayan through his singing lines, discussing who will sing what when they go back to the company. Back to the company? Wait, what? Yeah, believe it or not, they don't go home immediately after a music show. Usually there's still things they need to get done in the day, like fansign events, or in this case, recording. By pre-recording the majority of their performances now, it's helped them not only conserve their time better, but do exceptionally more with their day. I mentioned earlier that Stray Kids performed at a total of 66 music shows in 2018. Well, in the same year, they also hosted 45 different fansigns. This meant that Stray Kids needed to bounce from their performance straight to their fan event. Sometimes they got lucky and had only one or the other in the day, but it still meant they needed to attend something else, like an interview. When these events are overlapped onto each other, it gets really tiring. And unlike 2018, Stray Kids don't appear on music shows anywhere near as much. Okay, here, I want you to guess. If Stray Kids had 66 music show performances across 3 comebacks, how many do you think they had in 2024 with 1 comeback? 22? 19? Nope. 6. That's right, they only performed on music shows 6 times throughout all of 8's promotion. You might be wondering why it was so much less in 2018. My guess would be a combination of 2 things. Obviously, this is 6 years since they debuted, and in that time, they've picked up much more interest and don't need to be marketing as aggressively as before. The second thing I think of is how their world tour began a little over a month after the album. Realistically, they didn't have the time to just sit around waiting at music shows when they should be practicing their set. What they ended up doing instead of performing is they recorded a bunch of interviews prior to the album, some even months before it. Not only does it let them pay attention to their upcoming tour, but it can lighten the comeback week workload. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's incredibly easy leading up to the album. Which, let's talk about the album lead up quick. As we saw earlier, producing the next album doesn't begin once they're done with the current one. In fact, the musical production is usually pretty far along when they're promoting one. A recent example of this is how Ceremony was actually written over a year before Karma even released. This gives Sriracha time to write and record exactly the album they're looking to make. Ceremony wasn't a song they got right on the first version. It went through several variations before they got it to be the song we know now. Each time they felt like there was 1% more that could be better. This is a cycle they go through quite a lot. By writing the songs so far ahead, they have a bit more time to improve the songs. Does it probably suck to try and perfect each song? Yeah, for sure. But their ambition for quality has totally defined the sound we have now. And when they don't think a song meets the requirements they have, they put it on the shelf for another day or album. Track 4 on Karma is an example of that, where Han actually wrote the song back in 2021 before coming back to write it the way he envisioned it. When they're writing songs, they'll often record a guide version of it. This is basically their way of communicating their vision for a specific song with whoever is actually singing specific lines. It can also be a way for them to remember what they have in mind for the vibe and style of songs, especially with how many they write. Even though Karma had 9 original songs, they absolutely wrote more than 9 for it. And while I can't say for sure, I'd say it's rather likely they record more songs than they actually need to. Sometimes the song doesn't translate as well when all members are performing, so it gets set aside. This is where it can be a good thing that they have so many songs already written and saved. If there's a song they think would fit in well, they can swap it out and adjust it for that specific album. Overall, it gives them a bit of rest in the hectic time. It's important that they lock in the title track quickly. The sooner they have one selected, the sooner the other teams can get to work. Every now and then, Stray Kids choreographers will begin drafting the dance before the final recording is produced. Not only does it give them time to do what they do, but it opens up a window for everyone else depending on the choreography. The members want to begin practicing it as soon as they can after all. These practices are nothing easy either. They often stretch out across long hours, even eating into the night and early morning. During Clay 1 Miro, we saw Stray Kids learning Victory Song from about 3 p.m. all the way until 11 p.m. Or at least, that's the latest we actually saw them practicing this day. When they took a break for dinner, Hyunjin actually tells us they'll practice until dawn. That's about 16 hours of purely practice, just in the first day. It's so crucial that they get the choreography down perfectly. There really isn't any room for error. By the looks of it, the first day they practiced was on March 18th, meaning they only had 10 days to run through Victory Song before its first performance. That's really not that much time considering how much else they're doing. 16 hours of practice in just one day is absurd, but they kinda have to do it. It's smart to just practice really hard in one day rather than spreading it out across several days, since you're able to focus on just dancing that day. Practicing like this certainly comes with its tolls though. In several instances, the members have injured themselves while pushing themselves. Stray Kids unfortunately suffered 2 prominent injuries during the preparations for Clay 1 Miro. On February 19th, 2019, JYP Entertainment announced Sungmin had suffered a slight back injury and bruising while recording an unannounced video. It's theorized he picked it up during Finding SKZ Australia or while filming one of the music videos. On March 13th, 2019, Changbin was announced to have suffered a minor injury to his ankle while practicing choreography. This is a rough time to be getting injured. Less than a month before the album's promotion means you can't practice very well. We directly see the results of this while they're learning Victory Song. You may or may not have noticed not everyone is out there on the floor. As Stray Kids practiced, Changbin and Sungmin had to sit off on the couch and imitate the moves. While it was important they learned the dance, it was more important that they were ready for the grueling comeback weeks. This led them to noticeably go a little stir crazy, not being able to participate. It's a really tough situation. Yeah, they practiced for so long, but it's not entirely about having the moves down. The majority of that is conditioning your body to the choreography. And if you're just sitting on the side, it can feel like you're not preparing well. Preparing for an album and promoting it, honestly, sucks. It's an incredibly stressful process. You barely ever get a chance to breathe. That's why it's so important that Stray Kids are there for each other. Around the same time, Stray Kids were practicing Miro. They got a little silly with one of the moves, and each took a turn with it. But what's interesting is that Lino quickly suggested that Hyunjin does it with Changbin and Sungmin. That way they don't feel left out and forced to watch as the other members have fun. It's a small gesture, but it really does go a long way. It's this sort of thing that Stray Kids are really good at. They try their best to care for each other throughout their comebacks. Honestly, this extends beyond the comebacks. Even in just their daily lives, they try to be there for each other as much as they can. They've been around each other so much that they notice immediately when someone isn't being entirely their usual self. Truth is, they can't have a comeback with someone only partially present. It's a Stray Kids comeback. Not a Stray Kids except Changbin and Seungmin comeback. It just isn't the same. They're always looking for each other and making sure everyone is keeping up with the choreography. And when someone is struggling, the other members are always quick to step in and help them out. It's so important that they have this strong bond, as it not necessarily makes the comebacks easier, but it certainly eases the stress associated with it. That's why even when the process gets overwhelming, Stray Kids are able to find a way through it. The work is exhausting, the schedules are brutal, but having that support system helps their outlook on it all. It turns something that could easily break them down into something they can handle together. This is part of why each comeback is so lively. They can drink a million Americanos and energy drinks to compensate for their lack of sleep, but nothing beats the energy they get from each other. I mentioned earlier that comebacks are tolling on their minds too. Stray Kids have admitted that it can be overwhelming to constantly meet expectations at times, not only from their company, but from millions of fans watching every single stage. Every comeback is compared to the last. There's always the worry that they'll let people down with the newest music, and that kind of pressure builds up fast. That's why it's so interesting to see the kind of music Stray Kids released with Karma. You could still feel that the songs were Stray Kids music, but they all had a different feeling to them. It's easy to forget that these aren't just 3-minute performances, but also months of preparation, weeks of practice, and years of experience all squeezed into a singular moment. When something doesn't go the way they want, or when exhaustion catches up to them, it can really weigh on them. What helps is their connection to stay. Even when they're drained or running on nothing but coffee and adrenaline, they say the energy from fans is what pulls them through. That immediate feedback is what reminds them why they push so hard. Sure, the social aspect can get to be a lot at times, namely how in 2019, Han was struggling with large groups of people and experiencing symptoms of psychological anxiety. But just like anything, there are negatives and there are positives. While yeah, the constant support and attention can get a little overwhelming, they'll still try to express their appreciation. That's especially true during fansigns. These events can last several hours, with Stray Kids meeting hundreds of fans in one sitting. It's exhausting. In most cases, they haven't had a great chance to sleep after their music shows, but they still make the effort to give each fan their full attention. They sign albums, answer questions, joke around, and sometimes even remember the people they're meeting. It's part of what makes their bond with Stay feel so personal. Even after the grueling 15-hour rehearsals, they'll push through with the energy they receive from each other and Stay. They understand that for a fan, those few seconds can be unforgettable. And for Stray Kids, that memory is what makes the chaos of comeback season worth it. It's a tough balance though. The same constant visibility that fuels them can also drain them. But Stray Kids have learned to find the good in it and turn overwhelming parts into their motivation. It's this ability to turn pressure into drive that they've been able to keep growing. Stray Kids comebacks are ultimately built on sacrifice. The sleepless nights, injuries, relentless expectations, and the pressure of millions watching. Yet behind the polished 3 minutes on stage are human beings who lean on each other when exhaustion hits. What carries them through isn't just caffeine, but the bond they share and the energy they feel from Stay. If you want to see how Stray Kids challenged the genre expectations and changed all of K-pop, you can click the video on screen. Thanks for watching. Bye 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 bye.